We spend our entire lives submerged in this invisible ocean of physical pressure.
Right, and most of the time we don't even realize we're wet.
Exactly. But what if the words you speak today don't just, fade away into nothingness? What if they are this tangible physical force capable of altering the weather or moving massive stones or even actively harming your own body?
It is a really profound shift in perspective because every time someone drops a coffee mug or the wind howls or you raise your voice in traffic, there is a literal mechanical wave crashing into you.
Yeah, we just call it sound.
Right, we call it sound. And typically we just treat it as background noise,
Uh,
Or maybe just a mundane alert system like a phone ringing or a siren wailing.
I mean, we treat it purely as information.
Uh-huh.
We completely forget that sound is actually matter moving through space.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the mission of today's deep dive.
Which is quite the journey.
It really is. We are exploring a fascinating and, frankly, highly radical document from November 2021 by an author named Su Feng. It's titled The Mysteries of Life, Energy of Sound Waves.
And your mission today, as you listen to this, is to completely suspend your traditional understanding of acoustics.
Yeah, we are just talking about decibels here. This source argues that sound is a physical, life-altering force, like the literal engine of creation and destruction. Okay, let's unpack this. The core premise Zhifeng sets up is that absolutely any kind of sound has a physical impact.
Yes, and what's fascinating here is how the author synthesizes elements of classical physics, ancient folklore, and profound spirituality into this single unified theory.
Right, it's all connected for them.
Exactly. They don't just view sound as a byproduct of an action, they frame sound waves as possessing highly specific frequencies that carry distinct energies. And they argue that those energies act upon the physical environment in measurable and sometimes catastrophic ways.
Which is a massive claim. The text explicitly states that sound can act as a healing panacea, or it can be wielded as a powerful weapon for killing.
And to ground that incredibly massive claim, the author actually begins not with mysticism, but with a very tangible, well-documented anchor in the history of science.
Oh, the Chladni figures.
Yes. They want to prove to the reader that invisible sound waves cause organized, tangible changes in physical matter. So they point to these figures.
I love this experiment. For anyone who hasn't seen this, Ernst Chladni was an 18th century German physicist. He took this wide, thin metal plate, anchored it right in the center, and evenly sprinkled fine sand all over the surface.
A very simple setup, really.
Yeah, super simple. Then he took a standard violin bow and drew it along the edge of the metal plate.
And the friction of the bow generates a sustained acoustic vibration.
Right, which travels instantly through the metal. And the fine sand on top of the sheet doesn't just bounce around randomly like you might expect.
It does something much more organized.
It does. It acts almost like a physical spectrum analyzer for reality.
Mm-hmm.
As the frequency of the sound changes, depending on where and how he bowed the plate, the sand aggressively reorganizes itself. It forms these incredibly precise, beautiful, symmetrical geometric patterns.
And the mechanics behind the Chladni figures are really crucial for understanding the rest of the author's argument. The sand is actively pushed away from the areas of the plate that are vibrating the most.
The loud parts, essentially.
Right, and it gathers in what are called the nodal lines, the areas of the plate that are perfectly still. So the sound wave isn't just a chaotic noise, it acts as an invisible geometric architect.
It physically forces matter into specific formations based entirely on its frequency.
Exactly.
So we have a verifiable microscientific truth here, right? Sound moves sand. The frequency dictates the shape. But here is where the text takes a massive, dramatic leap in logic.
A very massive leap.
Zhifeng scales this concept up to an almost unimaginable degree. According to the source, if the Chladni figures prove that sound waves alter surrounding objects, then we have to look at what those changes look like out in the natural world.
And the text argues that we aren't just talking about moving a few grains of sand on a laboratory table anymore.
Not at all. The author lists these macro-environmental phenomena. They claim this exact same principle of sound wave energy can cause solid city walls to collapse.
Which is quite the escalation.
I mean, they say it can summon pouring, heavy rains, overflow floods, turn a drought-stricken area into a barren desert, and this is my absolute favorite, generate hailstones as big as footballs.
It is a phenomenal escalation of scale. They are attributing extreme meteorological and geological events entirely to the power of localized acoustic energy.
And I have to hit pause here and push back on this because that is a staggering leap to ask a reader to make. Moving fine sand on a metal plate requires a very controlled, localized vibration.
Yes, it's a closed system.
Exactly. But suggesting that an ambient sound wave can literally generate football-sized hail from the sky, that challenges every conventional boundary of physics and meteorology we have. How does the author even justify bridging that massive gap?
Well, the author justifies it by removing the concept of boundaries entirely. In Shuofeng's worldview, physics isn't divided into the micro and the macro.
It's all just one thing.
Right, it is a single, unbroken continuum. If a specific frequency has the power to organize matter, then the effect is simply a matter of amplitude.
Oh, I see. So just turn up the volume.
Precisely. If the sound wave is powerful enough and the frequency is resonant with the environment, the effect simply scales up proportionally. To the author, a storm isn't a meteorological event. It is an acoustic event expressing itself through water and ice.
So if sound is an organizing force that can build or destroy at scale, the logical next question is, has this actually happened?
Yeah.
And Xifeng doesn't just rely on laboratory theory to say yes. They point directly to history and myth.
Yes, the author pulls from a variety of cultural and historical narratives to demonstrate this macro-level impact. They essentially treat folklore as a record of acoustic anomalies.
Okay, let's get into the examples.
The first one they use is the famous Chinese folktale of Meng Jiangnu.
Right, the story of Meng Jiangnu crying at the Great Wall. According to the text, her husband died building the wall, and her weeping was so intense, so loaded with sorrowful energy, that it literally altered the environment.
The emotional energy became physical energy.
Yeah, the text says the sun and moon dimmed, autumn winds howled, and then an incredible 250 miles of the Great Wall completely collapsed.
Now, to be fair to the author, Shuofeng does concede a point here. They explicitly note that the literal telling of this story features exaggerated description by writers.
Right, they acknowledge it's wrapped in myth.
They acknowledge the mythic dressing of the tale, yes.
But they don't discard the core event, do they?
Not at all. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the author's philosophy becomes truly mind-bending. Shuofeng insists that while the collapse of 250 miles might be an exaggeration, the actual literal sound waves of her profound crying were generated.
And they went somewhere.
Right, and they have been oscillating in what the author calls the sky of history.
The sky of history. Let's just sit with that phrase for a second. The author is suggesting that history isn't just a timeline of memories. It is a physical, echoing chamber.
A literal acoustic environment.
Yes. The sound waves of an intense emotional event from centuries ago didn't just dissipate. They're still lingering, still vibrating, and still physically hitting human beings today.
It completely reframes our relationship with the past. History becomes an active acoustic presence. And Shuofeng follows this up with another foundational Chinese story to show how sound alters climate.
Oh, right, the unjust case of Dewey.
Exactly.
Dewey was wrongfully executed, and right before she died, she vocalized an oath. She swore that as proof of her innocence, there would be snow in June and 3 years of severe drought in Chuzhou.
And according to the author's logic, she wasn't just predicting the weather.
No, just by speaking those specific words with that specific intense energy, she generated a sound wave powerful enough to disrupt the atmospheric frequencies over the region. Her voice literally repelled the rain clouds for 3 years.
The author then bridges this concept over to biblical history, looking at the acoustic destruction of the walls of Jericho.
This is a classic example of sound as a weapon. Joshua and the Israelites need to enter Canaan, but the walls of Jericho are impenetrable.
So they don't use standard siege tactics.
Right. Following the text, they don't build battering rams. They march around the city for 7 days. And on that final day, the priests blow their horns, the entire army shouts loudly at the exact same moment, and the massive stone walls entirely collapse.
In the context of Shuofeng's theory, this wasn't a miracle of divine intervention. It was an act of applied acoustic physics.
Constructive interference, basically.
Exactly. The combined frequencies of the horns and the thousands of human voices achieved constructive interference. They hit the exact resonant frequency of the stone and mortar, vibrating it so violently that the structural integrity simply dissolved.
Like a singer shattering a wine glass, but on a citywide scale.
Yes, precisely.
And if you can use acoustic resonance to dismantle stone, the author argues you can use it to build with stone, which brings us to the Egyptian pyramids.
A mystery that has puzzled engineers for centuries.
Right, we all know the massive mystery here. How did ancient people move limestone blocks weighing dozens of tons without modern mechanical equipment?
Well, Shuofeng posits a fascinating, if highly unorthodox, solution. They state that the stones were not pulled or hoisted at all. Instead, a specific spell was recited.
And the stone just floated into the air. I have to admit, when I read this part of the source, my skeptical brain was kind of screaming. We're talking about a chanted spell acting as an anti-gravity device.
It is arguably the text's most radical claim. The author specifies that whoever chanted the spell generated a frequency that directly counteracted the mass of the stone.
Aha! Is wild.
The text explicitly says these massive blocks would float and literally follow the voice of the mantra chanter, sliding tightly into the wall perfectly.
It's like the human voice is operating as an acoustic tractor beam.
You sing the right note, and a 50-ton block just hums and glides through the air, slotting perfectly into a pyramid.
It's a very poetic image, even if it defies modern physics.
No.
It is. But this transition is really important because it moves us from macro architecture down to the extreme micro level of the human soul. I mean, if a shouted frequency can fell a city and a chanted frequency can alter the mass of a pyramid stone, what does a single syllable do to the human body?
This is where Shuifeng transitions from grand historical claims to deeply specific spiritual practices, specifically focusing on mantras.
Right. In many Eastern traditions, a mantra is a sacred utterance or sound believed to have spiritual efficacy.
And the author treats them not just as prayers, but as highly precise acoustic instruments.
Yeah, I was originally thinking of it like a voice-activated password, but it's actually much more mechanical than that, isn't it?
It is.
It's more like striking a tuning fork in a room full of pianos. If you hit the wrong pitch, you vibrate the wrong strings.
Exactly. The text specifically highlights the Avalokiteshvara heart mantra, which is the famous chant Om Mani Padme Hum. In Buddhist tradition, Avalokiteshvara is the embodiment of ultimate compassion, and a heart mantra is meant to be the distilled, vibrational essence of that compassion.
And Shuifeng asserts that the specific sequence of this chant generates magical sound waves.
Yes.
The text claims these specific waves have the physical function of enhancing truth, goodness, and beauty while actively suppressing falsehoods, evil, and ugliness. It's like an acoustic filtering system for reality.
And he also believes regular chanting of this is essential for the sublimation of life. And it's worth noting that Shuifeng consistently capitalizes the word life, capital L-I-F-E.
Why the all caps?
In the context of this document, they aren't just talking about biological survival. They are defining life as a profound, universal, energetic state that needs to be constantly fed and maintained.
Ah, I see. And the author gives an incredibly intense example of how sensitive this energetic state is, focusing on the pronunciation of the name Amitabha, the principal Buddha in Pure Land Buddhism.
This part is really quite striking.
It really is. The text claims the difference between pronouncing the first letter as versus is literally the difference between salvation and destruction.
This raises an important question. How can simply shaping your mouth slightly differently bypass all logic and cause what the author calls endless harm?
Exactly. Endless harm from slightly mispronouncing a vowel. That feels so punishing.
To understand it, we have to follow Shuifeng's strict chain of logic. The author is applying a mechanical view of physics directly to spirituality.
Okay, walk us through that.
They explain that the phonetic shift from to produces two entirely different sound waves because the physical wave shapes are different, the energy they carry is different,
Right.
because the energy is different, their inherent properties change, and therefore their real-world functions and effects are completely opposed.
So it's not that the universe is punishing a mistake, it's just raw physics. It's like accidentally turning the steering wheel of a car into oncoming traffic. The car isn't angry with you, you just changed the mechanical trajectory.
That's a perfect analogy, and Shuifeng describes having a deeply visceral, physical reaction to this.
Oh, yeah. They state that hearing someone say, Amitabha, makes them feel physically ill. They want to lose their temper, and they feel like they're falling into a dark abyss.
All from the acoustic impact of a single vowel.
Yes. But conversely, the text says hearing Amitabha brings immense joy. It induces calmness, emotional stability, and creates the profound feeling of entering the kingdom of heaven.
So we have established the author's full spectrum. Sound waves organize matter on a Chladni plate. They echo through the sky of history, and their exact pitch dictates our spiritual and physical reality.
Which naturally brings the text to its final, most immediate application, your daily life. So what does this all mean?
It comes down to your daily diet of sound waves.
Your sound diet. Because
Right.
whether we realize it or not, we are consuming an incredibly high volume of acoustic energy every single second.
We are constantly absorbing it.
Right. And the text argues that to maintain that vigorous, capitalized life we talked about, you have to absorb powerful, positive energy.
And this energy exchange is not metaphorical. For Swefeng, it is a literal physical transfer. But as we saw with the tuning fork analogy of the mantras, it is a double-edged sword.
Sound wave energy can dramatically build up your life force, or it can violently drain it. So
Yes.
functionally, how do we know what is draining us? I mean, the author's categorization here is actually a brilliant synthesis of acoustics and psychology.
It really is. Beneficial energies are described as positive, active, optimistic, and musical. These are sounds that induce joy and calmness.
And he also provides very specific examples of beneficial sounds, right? Things like beautiful songs, the whispers of lovers, the peaceful words of saints, and the chirping of birds.
And then we have the harmful energies. These are the negative, passive, noisy sound waves that make people feel anxious, bored, or worried.
Yeah, the examples Huethen gives here are the complaints and nagging of others, hoarse shouting, the growling of quarrel makers, and the croaking of crows.
Now, at first glance, comparing the chirping of birds to the growling of quarrel makers almost sounds like a children's fable.
It kind of does, yeah.
But if we view it through the lens of the Chladni plate we discussed earlier, it makes perfect mechanical sense. When Sufeng lists music or peaceful words, they are describing highly organized, periodic, harmonious wave structures.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Those organized waves create constructive interference. They reinforce the intricate organization of the human body and mind.
They arrange the sand into beautiful patterns.
Exactly. But when the author lists hoarse shouting or growling, they are describing chaotic, discordant, unorganized frequencies.
And those chaotic waves cause destructive interference.
Right. They physically disrupt the body's natural harmony, draining your life energy just to maintain equilibrium.
Which brings up the most crucial and frankly most damning point the author makes about our own behavior. Like when two people are arguing, that chaotic sound pollutes the environment. But the text states very clearly, when a person swears, he hurts others as well as himself.
The harm is fundamentally reciprocal.
Think about the physics of that for a second. You get angry, you raise your voice, you hurl an insult at someone, you think you are wielding sound as a weapon against them.
But you are the source of the wave.
Exactly. Because those vocal cords are inside your throat, you are the epicenter of that acoustic shockwave. You are vibrating your own chest, your own skull, your own cells with that chaotic, destructive frequency before it ever reaches the other person.
You are actively degrading your own physical and spiritual architecture.
It's terrifying, honestly.
It demands a complete reevaluation of how we communicate. Complaining or shouting isn't just venting frustration in this framework. It is an act of acoustic pollution. You are actively degrading your immediate physical environment.
The author distills this entire sweeping philosophy from moving pyramids down to daily arguments into one incredibly simple rule of thumb for the reader. Sufeng writes, in short, the sounds you like to hear are beneficial to you, and the sounds you don't like are harmful to you.
It is an elegantly simple conclusion to a very complex theory. And the text ends with the author's sincere hope that everyone can absorb the sound wave energies that are beneficial to their lives every day.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started with Ernst Chladni making sand dance on a metal plate, proving that sound is a physical architect.
We watched that logic scale up to the mythological, where acoustic resonance collapsed the walls of Jericho.
Right, and vocal frequencies floated dozens of tons of limestone into the Egyptian pyramids.
Right.
Then we examined the extreme mechanical precision required in spiritual practice.
Where shifting a single vowel in a mantra can dictate an entirely different real-world effect.
And finally, we brought it right down to your kitchen table, looking at the literal energetic impact of a lover's whisper versus a hoarse complaint.
It's important to remember that Shuofeng's worldview is a radical synthesis.
Absolutely. Whether you view this document as literal hard physics, or whether you choose to view it as a profound poetic metaphor about the power of our words, it forces us to critically reevaluate the auditory environment we are cultivating.
Because we're not just passive consumers of this invisible ocean, we are active wave makers.
Exactly. And that brings me back to the one detail from this text I just can't shake. The author claimed that the sound waves of Meng Jiangnu's ancient, world-breaking crying are still oscillating right now in the sky of history.
Lingering forever.
Yeah, the energy of that sorrow never truly vanished, it just lingered. So if we take that logic to heart, well, if sound waves truly echo through time, but the physical pressure of your voice never stops rippling outward, what specific sounds, what words, what tone of voice did you put out into the world today? And how will those exact vibrations shape the reality of someone walking through that exact same space tomorrow?